Entering the Pat Mayo Experience.
Pat Mayo Experience. Pat Mayo Experience. Pat Mayo Experience. Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience, presented by DraftKings 2022 NFL Future Bets. Maybe futures on anything, because, hey, it's August. We got to wager on something, and something that we might not get paid out on for a while. So NFL futures are the primary thing we can talk about. But, hey, there's other futures out there that you could potentially get down on. We gave out Liz Truss, new conservative leadership candidate in England at plus 350. Hasn't cashed yet, but it's looking like it's gonna cash. So there's futures available all across the board, across the spectrum when it comes to wagering. Joining me on the line, the deputy editor of sports betting at ESPN, David Bearman. What's going on, dude?
Hey, man. Pat, thanks for having me. Big fan of the show. Appreciate you having me on to talk futures. And like you said, you can bet futures on anything, any sport, anywhere. The one caution is they are going to hold your money until it comes in. So remember that as you put down these futures, that it's fun to track them. It's fun to watch them, but you're not going to see that money until the season's over.
Well, that's a really interesting part of all of this. So let's talk about some future strategy coming up right now, because a lot of people I know, unless it's like just the wrong line, essentially, or they're so far out ahead of the market in May, for NFL I'm talking about here. So like April, May, whatever it is, they have a good lean on something, the win totals get dropped, the division winners get dropped, they pounce and bet big on that. Then yeah, if it's worth your while, you can wait the 8 months or 9 months in order to cash your bet. But most people I know would rather roll over their money week after week. It's like compounding interest rather than putting it into a savings account where you get no interest on it.
And that's a very valid point. And I'm not trying to debunk the theory of taking futures, but the odds that you are provided by the books are set for reasons and in terms of liability. And you probably wouldn't get the actual true odds of what a team is. And if you bet them weekly, you might get better money using that money on a weekly basis on teams winning, losing, or possibly winning a Super Bowl, or get better odds as the season goes on. If you really, really like the Buffalo Bills and maybe they start 0-2, guess what? You got a much better price than you do if you take them in July. So I totally get people waiting it out. Personally, I don't go bananas before the season starts, and the NFL and college football are the two that I get ahead of at times with win totals, odds to win the Super Bowl MVP. Probably do maybe 2 or 3x of my bankroll that I would normally spend during, a week of the NFL, maybe 2 or 3 units, maybe 4 on totality of it. I'll break it down into a bucket of win totals, a bucket of futures to win Super Bowl, division, conference, and then awards. So I manage my bankroll that way with little buckets, but then I pay attention all season long to help my portfolio and take some chances in other teams, maybe some soft hedges here or there. And what I always like to do is I always save some of that bankroll for the playoffs, because now you know who's in the dance. You know who the final 12 or 14 teams are going to be in each league and each season, and jump in as well. So I'm also known to have some preseason bets. And then once the field is set for the postseason, jump in at a different price because I think a certain path to the playoffs. A perfect example is the Golden State Warriors. I know we're not talking NBA right now, but I had basically done some stuff with my DraftKings account where I set myself up to be able to take one big future for the playoffs. And I looked at 9-1 odds as the 3 seed. And I said, I'm jumping on that, and got to watch that the rest of the way. And naturally, you're going to hedge here and there when there's other teams involved. But futures are, it's, everyone likes to do the stock market. It's a version of that where these numbers are going to move and change every single week, especially in the NFL on a weekly basis. And you can jump in, you're not going to be able to sell your exact position, but you can jump in at other places in time to help what, ESPN's Doug Kazarian always talks about his portfolio. This is what I have now. This is what I'm adding, and this is what I'm doing as the season goes on. And it's fun to play with it. I like betting things to root on for the whole season, but obviously you have your weekly stuff that's going to be 4, 5, and 6x what you do in the preseason.
So reminder to everyone out there, if you want the entire NFL preview kit, it's all completely free. Hit the description. It's all up on Mayo Media Network right now. The hot links are in there. Tuesday's show with Cust and Jeff was the real kickoff to what we're doing, the best quarterbacks in football, and just bickering back and forth. And then we'll have win totals, team by team. We'll have prop drafts. We have it all ready for you. So please sub to Mayo Media Network or subscribe to the Pat Mayo Experience audio podcast, Spotify, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, wherever that may be. Leave a rating and review. Tell some friends while you're up there as well. There's the Mayo Media newsletter, completely free to join. Hit the description for that. And I mean, if you click on it right now, there are write-ups about potential outcomes for a lot of the rookies so far in this season and what we're looking at. Who are the rookies that you actually want to target? What are their best case scenarios? What are their downsides? Where are they likely to meet? And you can run projections on any player. RunTheSims.com. RunTheSims.com/Mayo. Get you 10% off the betting/daily fantasy package. Customizable optimizer, prop tool. It's all in that package. The price is going up August 15th. So you might as well save yourself $50 plus 10%. So $75. And go to RunTheSims.com/Mayo right now. Okay? Let's jump into this. You have the under on the Kansas City Chiefs 10.5 win total.
I look at the Chiefs and
it's scary. It's scary.
It is scary, and it's funny because I've done this a couple of times now, and every time I say it, I always am I really going to go off that cliff that I'm not going to pick an Andy Reid, Pat Mahomes team to win 11 games, especially with a 17-game slate? It's a scary one to do until you actually look at their schedule. And remember, they had struggles last year, even with Tyreek Hill on the team, with their defense struggling early and Mahomes and the team not on the same page. Now you take out one of the most dynamic wide receivers in football, luckily to my Miami Dolphins, but really break down what their schedule is. First of all, you obviously got the AFC West, which I'm going to flat out say is arguably the toughest division possibly in NFL history. You look at the fact that you got a Derek Carr-led Raiders team that added Davante Adams to what they have with Waller and Jacobs and Renfro. You have Russell Wilson, an all-pro Hall of Fame quarterback, coming to the Denver Broncos. And you have, one of the best youngest teams in Herbert and the Chargers on the other side of things. So that's a tough division, and that's just what they're going to play every single year. Every one of those teams can beat each other up, but that's 6 games versus that division. They then play the NFC West in your non-conference schedule, which is going to be at the Cardinals and Niners. And then, of course, you have the defending Super Bowl champion Rams, as well as a poor Seattle team. But that's 4 games against a very tough NFC division that arguably is the best division in the NFC. Oh, and by the way, you got that first place schedule for winning the division again. So you got to face the Bills. You got to face the Titans. You got to face the AFC champion Bengals, who beat you last time. You got to go at Indy, who now has Carson Wentz. And just for that extra game, Pat, you got that 17th game is Tampa Bay and Tom Brady and the Bucs. That's a very difficult schedule, if not the hardest schedule I've seen in a long time. Their defense was awful early last year before rebounding. Offense and defense kind of was on the same page as the Chiefs went on their late season run. But then we saw them exposed in the playoffs. They got crushed. Their defense got crushed by Josh Allen and the Bills, and they were lucky that the Bills' defense was just as bad. It was a back-and-forth battle. And then they lost the Bengals game because they couldn't stop a Bengals offense that had Jamar Chase. So do I think the Chiefs win the division and make the playoffs and potentially make another Super Bowl run? Sure. Can I see them going 10-7? Absolutely. That's a very tough schedule. You lose Tyreek Hill. Teams are going to focus on Travis Kelce. Not sure what you're going to get there in that division. So under 10.5 at plus money is something that, although it's not the one that I signed up to go first, that's the one that I took.
Find it very interesting. I think you're a bit higher on the Raiders than I am. It felt like if the Raiders hit their ceiling this year, they're about as good as they were last year. Although they had all the turmoil that went on, the coaching change, Henry Ruggs, they still just won all of these close games. That it just doesn't feel like that's going to break their way again.
Yeah, it could. And there's always the law of averages. They won all their close games last year, and they are the Raiders, and they're not the most talented team in football. But I just think adding an all-pro receiver like Davante Adams to what I think has been a very underrated quarterback in Derek Carr, you're not going to have all the crap with John Gruden going on last year. I think they're an improved team, not picking them to win the division. I think at plus 650, there's value there we can get into later. But that's still, I mean, the Raiders knocked off the Chiefs last year, and I think their team is better this year. But it's a loaded division. They play the loaded division in the West. I might be a little high on the Raiders than I should be. And again, the Raiders may not make the playoffs. They may win 7 games, but I wouldn't be surprised if they beat the Chiefs.
Well, let's get to that one right now, then. I'm just looking at the list of the things that you sent me. Derek Carr, 33-1 MVP is a long shot. It's a dark horse, obviously. And Raiders plus 650 to win the division. Like, in no world, I mean, listen, it's football. Crazy things happen. But Denver v. Las Vegas this year, Denver just feels like such a better team.
I mean, if I go back 365 days ago, let's say you and I had this podcast 365 days ago, and I said, hey, Arizona Cardinals over their 8.5 win total, Arizona Cardinals plus 650 to win the NFC West in a division that has Seattle, San Francisco, and the Rams, you would have thought I was crazy. And then it was basically the same odds in a very, very tough division with no weaknesses, with an Arizona team that nobody thought was going to be any good. And they go out and start out 9-1, win us our over win total before December, and then got us to a position where we were able to hedge on the Rams when the expected Cliff Kingsbury second half slide went, as he's done every single year. We're able to make money off of it. That was my play last year as the dark horse team that could potentially surprise people. And I think the Raiders might be that. And you look a year before Arizona was 8-8. They had a chance at the playoffs and blew it late. This Raiders team made the playoffs last year only because they beat the Chargers in the season finale before losing to the Bengals. I think it's a very, very similar situation where, yeah, you're looking at it saying, you're nuts. The Raiders aren't winning the West. And you know what? You're probably right. The Cardinals didn't win the NFC West last year, but they had such a heavy lead that I was able to go ahead and bet the Rams and win money anyway. I'm not expecting the Raiders to win the division, Pat, but they have value at plus 650. Now, are the Broncos better? Probably. Their odds are 3-1, not plus 650. Same could be said last year for the Niners or the Seahawks against the Cardinals, who finished second in that division. So the plus 650s can only go so far. Like, you're going to hit 1 out of every 10 maybe. But I think there's value there when you look at that division. And the way I analyzed the NFC West last year is how I'm analyzing the AFC West this year. I don't think there's that much separation between the Chiefs at plus 130 and the Raiders at plus 160. Same thing last year. Rams and Seattle were at the top with San Francisco, and the Cardinals were way at the bottom. As far as Carr's concerned, no, Derek Carr is not going to win the MVP. But if the Raiders somehow shock the world to win that division, Derek Carr is going to win the MVP. Again, I'm looking at 33-1. Is he my favorite play? Absolutely not. Like, anybody can go pick Josh Allen, Tom Brady, or Aaron Rodgers to win the MVP award, and I wouldn't argue with it. They are the favorites for a reason. It's a value play. Like, I think my top 2 plays that I would take for MVP would be Josh Allen, because I think there'll be voter fatigue on Aaron Rodgers. And at some point, God willing, that like the age is going to catch up to Tom Brady at some point. Like, he can only play like he's 25 years old for so long. He actually is 45. I turned 44 yesterday, and I feel like I'm 44. I don't know how Tom Brady gets away with it. He's 364 days older than me. But if the Raiders do something significant, Carr's in that conversation. Derek Carr last year finished 18-1 to win the MVP. So it wasn't the end of the world. You're getting 33-1, which I think is a more improved team. But yeah, you say who's going to win MVP? I would probably take Josh Allen. And I also like Lamar Jackson, just because I think they have an easier road than some of these other AFC teams. So, hey, it's a long shot. I didn't put $1,000 on it. I put a little coin on it with some extra cash that I had in one of my accounts. And I usually like to take a favorite and a long shot. So there's the long shot.
So Josh Allen is the favorite at 7-1 to be the MVP this season. And actually, right now at DraftKings Sportsbook, it's been bet down. You're moving markets here. Even before the show comes out, Derek Carr down to 28-1 at DraftKingsSportsbook.com. Lamar Jackson 20-1. I can see that one. If it's between Allen and Mahomes, I just feel like, especially if it's like, a bad week 1 or 2 for the Chiefs, and you're down on the Chiefs, I think the Chiefs are going to be fine. That if Mahomes can put up video game numbers again, losing Tyreek Hill, I think that's just going to reflect very well upon him, that he doesn't even need to have a typical Mahomes season. He could have 90% of a typical Mahomes season, and people will give him an awful lot of credit if he continues to be good. And people that's the hard part about this. And it's funny that Aaron Rodgers won back-to-back years, as this is still a play against the voters award. Like, what are the voters going to do? And people want to vote for Patrick Mahomes. They really do.
They absolutely do. And if you look at last year, like Pat Mahomes was in the mix. He was the favorite to win a couple of times. They did get off to a rough start. The odds got better and better. And all of a sudden you're like, yeah, I can get Pat Mahomes for 12-1. I'm going to jump in on that. At no point did anybody think the voters were going to say Aaron Rodgers is going to be the back-to-back MVP, especially with how the season started with the blowout loss to New Orleans. As the season went on with the toe and the COVID and everything else that happened with Rodgers, at no point did anybody think the voters would vote for him until they really had nobody else. It was like obvious. Yeah, Aaron Rodgers is going to win MVP again because the voters don't have a choice. He's the best player in the league. He led, with an injury and everything else, he led the team to the top seed and then tanked again in the playoffs. And I agree with you. I think the voters don't want Rodgers to win another one. Allen's price probably is too short right now. Wait for that team to lose a game or two before jumping in. But Mahomes, he has had every chance to win this MVP each of the last 3 seasons, so maybe it is his time. And I 100% agree with you. They go out and win that division easily, they are the favorite. Without Tyreek Hill, he absolutely should be the MVP. But we've seen weirder things happen. I mean, look, Bill Belichick doesn't win Coach of the Year when he should win it every single year with what he's done over in New England. But people vote how they want to vote, and there's a certain expectation level. And I think Mahomes and Kansas City have set the bar so high that Mahomes has 1 or 2 bad games, all of a sudden he's not going to win the MVP, which is unfair to him. It's not like Aaron Rodgers had 16 awesome games last year. He was good, but at the end of the year, everybody else had their flaws, and Rodgers was the top dog, and therefore he got what he earned.
I was really disappointed to see Russell Wilson only coming at 14-1, who I don't believe has ever garnered an MVP vote in his career, but this is a perfect situation for sort of the narrative that you talked about with Derek Carr. I think how you feel about the Raiders this season, I feel about the Broncos, that it's not that he got a skills upgrade at terms of receivers, but I do really think that the receiving core in Denver should be pretty good. I think that they're going to scheme with Hackett really well. They're going to be able to run the ball. I just think they play better defense, and that is going to go a long way to help Russ. And when you don't have Pete Carroll as your head coach, it's like, you know what? We're down 16. Why don't we run the ball? Have we tried that yet? Oh, we tried. It's not working? What if we try it some more? Maybe we'll break down the defense. I feel like that is out. And Russ can have a chance to cook here. People like Russell Wilson, by and large. He's a very popular figure. He's one of the faces of the NFL. Him never receiving an MVP vote will work to his favor at some point if he's not going to have the gaudy stats of Mahomes. But like you said, sometimes that doesn't matter. If they knock off the Chargers and they knock off the Chiefs and they win that division, that could be good enough.
And I agree. And I actually think what we've just been talking about, and we could talk about the AFC West for the rest of the show, I think the winner of that division, absolutely the quarterback should win the MVP. We always talk about how the MVP usually goes to we used to say top 2 seed that got the bye. Obviously, only one team gets the bye. But you win that division. And, you even go back and talk about Justin Herbert as an MVP candidate. You win that division, you probably are top 2 in the MVP race. And you're right about the Broncos. Listen, it's a new situation, a new coach. I'm not necessarily sure he upgraded any weapons. The defense is better, absolutely. Something, and I don't know what it is, Pat, something was just off last year, and I don't want to put all the blame on Pete Carroll, and he deserves a lot of it. But you had an offense that had Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf, and, Carson was injured, but you had Rashard Penny come out of nowhere to do what he was supposed to do 2-3 years ago. You had weapons. So he hurt the finger, he came back a little too early. Something was just a little bit off with Wilson last year. That's why I'm not sold on Denver. On the surface, you have an all-pro quarterback who should have gotten MVP votes going to a team that has weapons and a solid defense. It should be a recipe for me agreeing with you that the Denver Broncos could win that division. Russ wins his MVP. He gets to cook, and the Broncos go and possibly win the Super Bowl, which is in the camp of where I think the Raiders could do. I just don't know what it is. And sometimes you can't identify something. Something was off with Russ last year. I don't know if it was the finger or it was more than that, but that team was much better than it should have been much better than it was. Russ should have been much better than it was. And I watched a lot of those Seattle games, and I did not see the same Russell Wilson that I had seen in years prior. Maybe it was the finger and Pete, and who knows what goes on behind the scenes. Something was off, and if he turns it around and goes back to the Seattle all-pro Russ Wilson with this Denver team in different situation, they absolutely could do what you think they're going to do. Something bothers me about it. And I don't think Denver is as good as people think. You don't think the Raiders are as good as people think. But, where are the Chargers in this mix? That is one hell of a division. And that's why I say it could be the most impressive division we've ever seen in football. When we used to talk about how these divisions are, the NFC East is giving you an 8-8 champion, or back in the day, the 7-9 or 6-9-1 team won the NFC West. We have a loaded AFC West division.
Looking at the odds, the issue is none of them seem like they're any good. Like, I like Russell Wilson. I think that if he was 33-1, that'd be a bet. 14-1, no thank you. Like Joe Burrow, 12-1, no thanks. Justin Herbert, 10-1, no thanks. Like, those aren't big enough for all of the circumstances that need to come true for me to tie up my money for this long. Like, even like, I guess if Dallas ended up going like 14-3, presumably Dak could potentially win it. I just don't see that. But there is a very interesting range right here. Hurts, Lamar, and Kyler. Specifically because they have the ability to put up these rushing numbers that start looking like video game numbers, a lot like when Lamar Jackson won the MVP in 2019. Was he really the most valuable player in the league? No. I mean, Mahomes is the most valuable player in the league. He's the best player in the league. It's like the Belichick thing. You should just win every year. That's not how this award works. So if you get a situation where Jalen Hurts puts up like 1,000 rushing yards and 3,500 and he has good like he throws or rushes for more touchdowns than is expected, all of a sudden you're like, holy shit, the Eagles won the division and they're like the 3 seed, and Jalen Hurts was awesome, especially because he comes into the year with like there's still people that don't think he should be the starter in Philadelphia. So if you have all of this, like Lamar in 2019, it's like, well, could Lamar actually be good? It's like, yeah, turns out he can be pretty fucking good. And now he's the MVP because he beat expectations so badly that he didn't have to have necessarily the best season, although he was excellent, obviously, a well-deserved MVP. But I can see Hurts potentially having that season. I can see Kyler having that season and Lamar potentially having that season again as well.
There are many different ways to break down who could win NFL MVP. And we've hit on one of them where you win the best division in football and you get through that mess. And, you know, you talk about the odds. Yeah, I don't want Justin Herbert at 14-1 and I don't want Russell Wilson at 12-1. But the reason why I'm on Derek Carr is because he is 33-1. If Derek Carr was 18-1, I wouldn't be on him. But the other way to look at the MVP race is find a team that has a shitty schedule that might go and win 14 games. You mentioned the Cowboys in that division. If it's not the Eagles in that division, all of a sudden you have, it's not like Ryan Tannehill was getting any first place votes last year for the Titans run, but Derrick Henry was in the mix. All of a sudden, Derrick Henry looked to become the first non-quarterback to win it in forever since Adrian Peterson, not because Derrick Henry was the best player in the league, but he was the best player on a team that was a 1 seed in the AFC easily. So you look back and say, all right, let's take out the AFC West monster for a second, and those teams are all going to beat each other up like the SEC East does. I don't know why I made that comparison. And look at a team that has a shitty schedule. Look at the Ravens. The Ravens get the first 4 games of the year, which is a really odd scheduling quirk against the AFC East. So you're going to get the Bills, Dolphins, Jets, and Patriots, which are all winnable games for the Ravens. You get the NFC South, so you're going to get the Falcons, Saints, Panthers, and of course you get the Bucks, but that's 3 out of 4 winnable games, and they can beat the Bucks. Your extra game is the Giants. And as for your own division, the Bengals are good. The Steelers aren't. And what happens with the Browns is going to probably figure out at some point whether Deshaun plays or not. It's his first game back as of today. His first game back is against Lamar Jackson, the Ravens. So I look at this Ravens team who won 8 games last year, and they're getting both their running backs back, including who's supposed to be really good, J.K. Dobbins. We all loved him last year before he didn't play it down. I think the Ravens have a path. Do I think they're the best team in the conference? Absolutely not. The Bills are. The Chiefs are probably next, and the Bengals should be in the mix. But Lamar Jackson, as of today, is in a contract year. They haven't given him yet. Will they give him the contract before the season starts? I don't know. Everybody's getting money these days. Kyler just got his. But if Lamar Jackson is in a contract year and the Ravens have an easy schedule, I think they win that division, especially with the Browns and Watson up in the air. And I think the Bengals played over their heads last year, and you always have that Super Bowl next year Super Bowl jinx. You didn't win it and you fall off the planet the next year. I do think the Bengals will be good. But if the Ravens can win that division, I mean, it's 10-1. It's not 4-1. It's not 3-1. Lamar Jackson in that area we just talked about, 20-1. He ain't 33-1. You'll never get that on Lamar because he's a former MVP. But he's not 7-1 like Josh Allen. Why can't Lamar in a contract year lead the Ravens to a division title? Forget about the playoffs because it doesn't matter with the MVP race, and win the MVP like he has already done. So I think that is a more realistic thing than Derek Carr winning at 33-1, but that's why it's priced that way. But if I were to tell you, Pat, that the Bills are going to face the Ravens in the AFC title game, would you be shocked?
No, not at all. And I like where you're at with the Bengals as well. I don't think they make the playoffs.
Right. I mean, it's the Super Bowl swoon the next year. I can't explain it. You lose the Super Bowl. You don't play well the next year. Now, the Bengals last year took advantage of an off year from Roethlisberger, a Browns team that is the Browns, Baker Mayfield, Browns, that's what they are, and a Ravens team that was missing their entire backfield and still won 8 games. So I think the Bengals took advantage of that. You beat the Chiefs in the playoffs, you beat the Raiders in the playoffs, and then you go ahead and you shock the Chiefs and go to the Super Bowl. Weren't the best team last year. I think they take a step back because I don't think they're there yet. And what are you left with? That AFC North is not as good as people think it is. And the Ravens, to me, are the best team, and you're getting 10-1 to win the AFC. If they get to the title game, hello, hedging. Or, I mean, I would not be stunned if they made the Super Bowl either.
I can definitely see that. I was hoping that the Browns division odds would be a little bit longer. It's plus 235 at DraftKings right now. I was hoping it would be like 3.5 to 1, but I guess the news that now they are expecting Deshaun to come back potentially in week 7. Because I looked at the beginning of their season. I was like, well, what games does Deshaun actually miss if that's the case? The first 6 weeks of the year. Panthers, Jets, Steelers, Falcons, Patriots, and Chargers. That could be 4-2 with Jacoby Brissett, honestly. And I guess it really depends on what you think of Stefanski as a coach. Will he be able to utilize Brissett in the proper ways? Where, I mean, you're pretty familiar with Jacoby Brissett. He's with your mighty Dolphins for a while. He's a very competent quarterback. Like, he's not going to win you games, but he's very rarely going to throw you out of games at the same time. The Browns still have a tremendous offensive line, tremendous backfield, and their defense is good. It's, can they stay healthy enough on that defense to make these kind of close games? They can control the clock. Like, they could go 4-2, 3-3, 5-1 through that stretch. Then all of a sudden you have Deshaun Watson come back, and it's like, ooh, if he's still Deshaun Watson, they're looking pretty good.
Yeah, and that Deshaun Watson thing is always going to be out there. I mean, he's suspended 6 games today. Who knows what the NFL is going to do? And you mentioned Jacoby Brissett. Saw him right up in person last year, and it was a great plan for me and my cousins and all the season ticket holders that I grew up with in South Florida to make an entire year in advance trip to Vegas to see the new stadium, to see Tua and the Dolphins play in Las Vegas at the brand new stadium, and then you get out there and it's Jacoby Brissett behind center, losing you the game. And that honestly was his best game of all the games he played. He's not going to lead the Cleveland Browns to anything. So the hope for the Browns is that Deshaun Watson plays week 7 the rest of the year. He's the Deshaun Watson of years ago, leading the Browns to the promised land. I don't see it. Deshaun Watson has not thrown a football in a game in almost 2 years now by the time he takes the field. And I don't believe in Jacoby Brissett. Now, they do have an easy 6 games. You make a very valid point, and ask the NFL how that worked out, but 4-2 is a realistic possibility with Watson back, but we don't know if he's actually going to be back. So in terms of trying to handicap, me personally, I've stayed away from the Browns because you still don't know what's going to happen. And Jacoby doesn't impress me based on what I saw last year. He just needs to do what Garoppolo and Jacoby himself, ironically, did when Terrific Tom was suspended for 4 games and just let the ship continue to go. I believe they went 3-1. Brady came back on a vengeance, won the Super Bowl, yada, yada, yada. That's Tom Brady. Deshaun Watson has led a Texans team in a crappy division to a couple of division titles and nothing else. So as a guy on a team that was rumored to be getting Deshaun Watson all of last season, I wanted nothing to do with it. And that's why I'm not – do I believe Watson's talented? Absolutely. He's one of the best in the game. He needs to show me something. And remember, he's going to the Cleveland Browns, a team that has amounted to nothing for about 30 years. So – I still think that you put all of that together and you're getting a surprisingly good price on the Baltimore Ravens and Lamar Jackson.
Let's talk once again about those MVP narratives, because Deshaun Watson might come back and throw 8,000 yards in 12 games, and he's not winning MVP. That's just not happening. So just kind of cross him off the list. 40-1 seems a bit steep for a guy who's at least going to miss 6 games that no one likes at this point, especially in the media. But I feel like the MVP in football has transformed over the past 5-6 years, much like the NBA MVP award has, where we can kind of point out, hey, there's an attrition factor. The same guy's just not going to win every single year. But you might get a few back-to-backs. We've seen it in the NBA now, and we've seen it in the NFL now. But essentially what they have told us is that no matter how good of a season that any non-quarterback has, they're not winning MVP. Because if it was the case, Cooper Kupp would have won last year. They have specifically reserved the Offensive Player of the Year award for that guy, the best non-quarterback. Unless someone throws for 55 touchdowns or something, then they win both. So I see like Jonathan Taylor, 50-1. That's great. Derrick Henry, 50-1. That's not happening.
No, it's not happening. And I have a buddy who was all over Henry last year and showed me his 80-1 ticket, showed me his 100-1 ticket. He said, look at the odds. He keeps running for 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. The guy's going to run for 2,000 yards. I got a golden ticket. And every week I told him, you just threw money in the fire, literally light your fireplace up because that's where it's going. But what if the guy 2,000? It doesn't matter. It does not matter unless things change. And maybe it's when voters turn over and new voters come in. This award goes to the best quarterback on one of the best teams in football every single year. I mean, Aaron Rodgers, who nobody wanted to give the award to, won it back-to-back because his team won 13 and 14 games in consecutive seasons and got the 1 seed. That's what happens. So you take the 2 teams that you think are going to be the top 2 teams, and this is something that me and Kazarian talked about back when it was 2 teams get a bye. Take the top 2 buys in each conference, who they're going to be, and bet on those 4 quarterbacks because that's who's going to win it. And if you're right on who gets the buys, now it's 1 team, so a little bit different, that's who's going to win. And whether it's the quarterback in the AFC West or whether it's Josh Allen dominating the AFC East over the other 3 teams, or whether you go out to the NFC and you have Tom in one division, Dak in one division, Rodgers again in one division, and whoever comes out of the West, which will probably be Stafford and the Rams, those are your MVP candidates. Like, there's no reason to play anybody else. Henry's not winning it. Taylor's not winning it. Quite frankly, Pat, it'd be easier if they just took him off the board because it's not going to happen. Derrick Henry ran for over 2,000 yards and 1 million touchdowns, led his Titans to the number 1 seed in the very, very tough AFC. Didn't matter a lick. He wasn't winning it. He's not going to win it this year.
What about Tua? 50-1. I wish it was 500-1 because I'd be very satisfied with that. But if there's any one player, and you're a Tua guy, it sounds like I can hear it in your voice, or you've drank the Kool-Aid because it ain't changing until next year at this point now. But if you're just talking about that, sometimes it's all about just beating whatever the expectations are. Let's say the Bills falter a little bit, and Miami wins this division, and they're 12-5, something like that. They're the 4 seed or the 3 seed in the AFC. They get by the Bills, and Tua is not great, but he's very competent. And you have all these expectations of Tua sucks, should be replaced. And all of a sudden, like, he doesn't suck. He's actually pretty good. Not elite, but good. Very competent with these new weapons. Is there any chance the media would give it to him because the media loves Tua?
To be honest, I'm a Tua backer. Anybody who's listened to me or followed me on Twitter, I'm in the Tua and on camp. I actually wrote up a Tua for MVP last night in the email that I sent you and Kyle.
And deleted
and then
it?
I deleted it. Then I deleted it. And I'll tell you why I deleted it.
So cowardly.
I didn't want to come across as the homer. I got the Tua jersey up on the wall. Big Dolphins fan, as everybody knows, from there, etc. Still own season tickets. I am a Tua backer. I think Tua has gotten a raw deal because he hasn't had the weapons. And our great Bill Barnwell wrote a piece last week for ESPN.com of let's rank the offensive weapons that these quarterbacks have and look at the rankings for the column I did the last 3 years. This year is the Dolphins 9th in best offensive weapons. In Tua's first 2 years, they were 30th and 27th. So think about that. Like Tua, the quarterback of the future, who's been told he's terrible and the coach wanted him out and the owner wanted him out. He's had the 27th and 30th ranked offenses in terms of weapons to go for. The Dolphins offense had been nothing less than brutal. He was under a Flores-led, who's a Flores as a defensive guy, as we remember from the Patriots. Throwing to Devontae Parker, who couldn't get open on me. No disrespect to Devontae, but hamstring injuries every single day, doesn't get open. The really, really good Mike Gesicki, one of the top 10 in the game. His separation is, again, same as Parker, couldn't get open on you and me. A 7th round draft pick in the running back and an offensive line that's awful. So now you go get him Tyreek Hill, Raheem Mostert, a couple of other guys. You got Jalen Waddle for year 2. He's got the weapons. He has an offensive-minded coach in Mike McDaniel, who, as you've seen, knows how to use offense, as you've seen in San Francisco, taking that team to Super Bowl and NFC championship games. He has everything in front of him right now. And to your point, if something happens to the Buffalo Bills, and I did say this on another show recently, injuries happen, Josh Allen goes down, the Bills have a a whole bunch of offensive line injuries. Who knows? Dolphins win that division. That's a whole new ballgame. And you're getting a guy at 100-1 in some places, 80-1. There was a bet that was floating around the other day that was $1,000 at 75-1. Everyone assumed it was me. Trust me, it was not me. But it's there. I mean, you're getting 75 to 100-1 odds on a team that should be the second best in that division. If they're second best, he isn't going to win it. Should something happen to the first place team, he's going to finish the year as the most accurate quarterback in the NFL. You can write that down now. Too bad you can't bet that. He has weapons. And again, camp has only been 4 or 5 days old. I'm not losing my mind over camp. Yeah, I tweeted out the 50-yard touchdown against the guys not trying on defense. But they have gotten Tua what Tua needs. Now, should they all stay healthy, he has every opportunity in the world to cash that 75 to 100-1 ticket. Not out of the realm. I was hoping you were going to ask because I didn't want to write it and you say, hey, Bearman, why did you pick Tua? What a homer. I have put money on it. I will tell you that. It is a bet I have placed at 100-1, not expecting it to cash. 33-1 on Derek Carr is a lot more realistic. But sometimes that's how guys win MVP. Something happens to the best team. A team that's not expected to do it. And people forget when they go ahead and bash Tua, the guy has a winning record in the NFL. Like Jacoby Brissett lost all those games last year, not Tua. Tua comes back, the team wins 7 in a row and has a chance to win and make the playoffs before they lost. Couldn't beat Buffalo. You got to beat Buffalo. And that right now, what's standing between the Dolphins and the playoffs is the Buffalo Bills.
The funny thing is thinking back to San Francisco last year, that even when San Francisco went on its run a year ago, like there was just never any talk about Jimmy G. And he was having a pretty good year. I feel like Tua would probably end up following into that camp, except for the fact that people are so milquetoast on Jimmy G to begin with. Like, they don't really have opinions. Like, hey, handsome dude, he's kind of good, kind of bad, take him or leave him. With Tua, people have real opinions that if he's not a disaster, it'll make him seem really good. But let's say they're not good this year. Is there any chance Tua is back next year?
It depends on why they're not good. If they're not good because their quarterback can't get...
It's probably because of Tua.
Right. If they're not good because the quarterback is not as accurate as he should be and can't get the ball in the playmaker's hands and throws too many interceptions, then no, he's not back. If they're not back because the defense all of a sudden regresses and they're allowing 40 points per game and the coach is making bonehead decisions like other coaches has made, then maybe it's not on Tua and the ownership and GM says, Tua had, led the league in completion percentage, had 35 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, and threw for 4,000 yards. It ain't his fault. That would be the only way he's back next year. But I do not think, like most people, that it's playoffs or bust. This team could win 10 games. They won 9 last year. Now they got Troy Hill. They could win 10 games and not make the playoffs in a loaded AFC. So if you would go ahead and put the 4 division champions in and you give the 3 wild cards to 2 AFC West teams, maybe the Browns or Bengals or the Colts or the Titans, like, you're out of spots, which, the Dolphins every year in the last 20 have competed for the 5 or 6 seed. Now you get the 7 seed because of New England and Tom Brady. Well, the Bills are so good that you're really competing for those 3 wildcard spots, which easily could go to all 3 AFC West teams or 2 West teams and a combination of the runner-up in the other 2 divisions. Is it really on Tua that the Dolphins win 10 games? He had a great season. So I don't think it's as simple as playoffs or bust. I think it comes down to how did he perform. If he performs crappy, he's gone. I mean, he's up for contract at some point after the rookie deal's up. If he has a good season, I think they sign him long term.
I want to talk about some more of these division winners. You said Raiders plus 650. I'm trying to let's keep the barometer here 6-1 or higher when it comes down to it. That gives us the Jags, the Texans, the Seahawks, the Steelers, the Jets. The Patriots are 5-1. You have the Panthers. You have the Falcons. Falcons are 35-1. Man, no respect on Mariota's name there. We have Washington at 5-1. The Giants at 8-1. Bears at 14-1. Lions at 10-1. That one is becoming pretty popular. I don't quite get it, but I do at the same time because if something happens to Aaron Rodgers, yeah, I expect the Vikings to be pretty good, but they might not be at the same time. This is still the Vikings. They're sort of like the NFC Browns at this point, although slightly more successful, but not really when you go and look at it. They just don't have the completely completely flame out seasons that if the Lions turned out to be pretty good, could they win the division with an Aaron Rodgers injury? Yep, I guess so. That could happen. The one I was looking at were the Jags, 7-1. Like, if Lawrence just takes a leap and they're good, they've revamped the offensive line. They've revamped a lot of the weapons that he has. Etienne's coming back. We probably don't see James Robinson, but that might end up being a good thing if it just means more Etienne out of the backfield. Defense isn't great, but you're competing against the Titans, who are like, okay. The Colts, who they have Matt Ryan, who's not good, so that's a problem. And the Texans, who you're probably going to beat twice. Maybe the Jags are the worst team in this division, but I can see a scenario where something breaks the right way and all of a sudden Saxonville is back and it was like the year they went to the AFC Championship game. Like, I think they were 9-1 that year to win the division. I could see a circumstance like that, but it all depends on Lawrence taking a leap.
Listen, you just listed all the teams that were 6-1 or longer, and you made me feel a lot better about the Raiders pick because of all those teams.
But the Raiders have to beat the Chargers, the Chiefs, and the Broncos. Like that would require an injury and two like horrible outcomes. With the Jags, they could just win this division. Like the Colts and Titans are good, but like if they were bad, I don't think it would be like super stunning.
I don't blame people who look at the Jags that way. I had a guy recently tweet at me, "Hey, mark it down right here, save this, pin it. The Jags at 7, 8, 9-1 to win the division, blah, 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 blah." Like, I get it. They can't be any worse. Let's put it that way. All due respect to Urban Meyer. They have a real NFL head coach who's led teams to the promised land before. They have a quarterback who's entering his second year with better weapons, better defense, better line, and a running back that didn't see the field last year. So in theory, they should be better. They were one of the teams who I was looking at the over-under yesterday and looking at their schedule and thinking, last year, my lock of the year was under 5.5 or 6.5. It was the same number last year. Somehow, some way, people bought into the Urban Meyer, Trevor Lawrence love, and the Jags were 6.5 last year. That was my unequivocally bet of the year, was take the Jags under. I'm nowhere near as confident this year that it would be under or over because I think the number's pretty good because, like you said, not the hardest division in the land. I think the Titans are better than people are going to think they are. For some reason, the team that won the number one seed in the AFC last year, yes, they traded away A.J. Brown. Like, they're 20-1 to win the conference. The Colts get Carson Wentz. They should be better. Carson Wentz, who knows what the hell you're going to get with him? He was in a terrible situation in Philly. Yeah, I think the division is
Carson Wentz to Washington, Matt Ryan to Indianapolis.
My bad.
Yeah,
mixed that up. Carson Wentz to Washington from Indy, Matt Ryan to Indianapolis. Correct. Yeah, quarterback musical chairs gets you every year. Matt Ryan, solid quarterback in Indy, didn't do much in Atlanta other than 1 year going to the Super Bowl and consistent 9 and 10 wins. Can the Jags take a step up this year? Absolutely. They can absolutely step up. They're not going to finish dead last. Houston's the worst team in that division. They could beat them twice. I expect the Jags to go around their 6.5 win total, 6 win, 7 games. I'm not putting them winning the division. I just think, yes, the Raiders have to beat all of those other teams in that division. Of all the teams you mentioned, if you take the Raiders out because their division's too tough and you take the Jags out because I don't think they're that good yet, Washington one was intriguing. And you look at Washington, that division, I mean, you get the Giants twice. The Eagles, good, not great, even though I do like them to hit their win total. Cowboys, you never know what you're going to get. Washington, they're not great, but getting 6 or 7 to 1 in the division, somebody else wins that division every single year. It's a new team every year. May not continue, but somehow it's continued for 15 years. I wouldn't put it, if you had said to me the Washington, I guess they're the Commanders now, won the NFC East, I wouldn't be like, you're smoking something, Pat. You're crazy. Do I think it's going to happen? No. I don't think the Raiders are winning. I don't think the Jags are winning. But we're not here to just say these teams are going to win, period. There's no upsets. The NFL is a parity league, and it would not stun me to see Washington step up and win that division. I don't think they will. They're the third best team to me, clearly. But I like them better in that division than I like the Jags in the South.
Well, the Commanders are 5-1. I mean, you kind of dismissed the Giants, but Brian Daboll being there, I don't know if we won't be able to properly measure until after the season what remember VORP in baseball? I guess it's WAR now, but like Daboll versus Joe Judge. How many wins is that worth? It could be a bunch. Like, they have talent. If they were just organized competently, they could be okay.
Yeah, I didn't believe in Daniel Jones from the beginning. Like, I thought that was a terrible draft pick at the time. Is the difference the head coach? Maybe. What are you getting out of Saquon Barkley? What are you getting out of you didn't get anything out of him the last 2 years. Obviously, he had injuries. The offensive line, the worst offensive line in football last year in every metric. Kenny Golladay was the biggest disappointment on the field last year as a wide receiver. Is it all Joe Judge's fault? Or are you going to blame a little bit about Golladay not getting open, not staying, healthy, Daniel Jones not getting him the ball? I mean, if your game plan is Daniel Jones checking down 3 times and taking off and running 80 yards, you better redo that game plan. And listen, I went to a couple of Giant games last year. I have a buddy who has tickets, and I'd go to a couple of games. I'm not overly impressed with their talent to the point where I think the coach. Listen, Joe Judge lost him plenty of games. They were right to fire him. Brian Dable. Not like he's coached a lot of teams over time either. So can they be better than last year? I think that whole division's better than last year. I think that division's going to be overall better than they were the last couple of years. We called them the NFC least. But I'm not buying the Giants just yet.
Last win total I want to talk about, because I'm with you kind of lockstep on this one, is the Bears under 6.5. 6.5 just seems like such a high number for such a crappy team.
The Bears are where I think the Jaguars were last year. Like, I looked at the Jags 6.5 last year, depending on what book you had. I'm like, are you kidding? Like, me and Ariel Epstein from Yahoo went back and forth on Twitter saying this got to be a mistake. I looked at the Bears yesterday, and I had already bet them when I was in Jersey a few weeks ago at a different book that had a good number. They're going to be favored in 3 games all season long: home versus the Texans, and Washington and the Lions. And I would put at least Washington and the Lions, I would put in a camp of being better than the Bears. But as of today, they're favored in 3 games versus Texans, Washington, Lions. They also get the Lions again, Giants, Jets, Falcons. So those are winnable games. If you win all of them, which they're not going to do, that gets you to 7 wins. There is not another W on this schedule by looking at it. You lost Khalil Mack. You lost Allen Robinson. Like, what did you see out of Justin Fields last year that impressed you? Who's he going to throw to?
Well,
Mooney?
They drafted that guy who's like 74 years old.
Right, and you got Mooney, and you got Harry, who the Pats couldn't give away for a bag of deflated balls. Like, and by the way, you're in a division where the Lions, as we talked about, are getting better. I don't see the love of them winning the division, but they are better. Vikings are getting better. Oh, and by the way, you got Aaron Rodgers and the Packers on the other side, who the Bears never beat, no matter who was there. Like, Aaron Rodgers just owns the Bears. I don't see how this team gets to 7 wins, just like I looked at the Jags and said, there's not 7 W's on the schedule no matter what happens. Because let's just say they win the games they're supposed to win at home versus the Texans, Washington, and the Lions. Then you're going to go on the road and beat the Lions, Giants, Jets, and Falcons, all of which, except for the Falcons, are better than the Bears. And that's if you don't drop something else that you shouldn't lose. Now, maybe they pick another W out. Maybe they win at home versus the Vikings because, something happened and Kirk Cousins got injured and all of a sudden you beat the Vikings. You're still counting on winning all of their other games, which of the crappy, shitty games I just mentioned. I think they're the worst team in the league. I also bet them last night to have the worst record in the league because the teams that are favored are the Texans and the Jets.
And they play both those teams.
And they play both those teams, so that's an advantage if the other teams beat them. So just like I played the Jags at under 6.5 as my lock, and I took the Jags to have the worst record, which I later found out it wasn't number 1 pick. It was worst record. Make sure you read your rules in your book because the Jags upset of the Colts in week 17 last year week 18 caused a tie with the Texans, and I had to dead heat rules chop, which was bullshit because they were the number 1 pick, but we won't get into that. I did the same bet on the Bears. Under and worst record. Again, not number 1 pick, worst record. You're getting some value there because the other teams they feel are crappier. But Pat, you find me 7 wins on that schedule.
I can't. I can barely find you 3 wins on that schedule. I'm lockstep with you on how bad the Bears are going to be. And if they had gone out, because there's always almost the case that I made for the Jags. Like, if Lawrence makes this leap, all of a sudden the Jags could be a lot better. But they went out and they got him help, at least. Like, it's feasible in my mind. Be like, oh, they did this, they did A, they did B, maybe C could be the outcome if there's a leap. With Fields, he could take the leap and they could still be bad. There's no one to block for him. There's no one to throw to. The defense is horrible. So I'm with you. I was just looking at DraftKings right now. What do you think is too much vig to pay on the under of 6.5? Because the under on 6.5 right now is minus 150. However, if you go to DraftKings Sportsbook and hit alternate win totals, you can get under 5.5 at plus 160.
What is under 4.5?
They just do 7 and they just go one each way. So you can go over under 7.5, over under 5.5 with different vig.
I'm going to go look at my bank account and see what I can put at plus money under 5. And there's not 6 wins on this schedule either. Listen, it's not just my opinion of the roster and stuff. What I like to do with some of these is I have many friends in the industry and many colleagues who are fans of these teams. We all have our team. People come to me asking about the Dolphins. I'll give them an honest answer. I went to a colleague of mine who is a rabid Chicago Bears fan, who defends them every single week, who bets on them every single week. And it's like, all right, you're going to play all your Bears in fantasy. You're an idiot. I point blank asked him, are there 7 wins on this schedule? I know you're the biggest Bear fan I know. You're an apologist. You think they're going to win the Super Bowl every year. Are there 7 wins on this schedule? He looked at me and he said, not a chance. And that's an optimistic Bears fan. So he knows what's coming. We know it's coming. I would bet the under 5.5. Absolutely.
I like it. I think that's what I'm going to make the best bet of this show now that we've talked through it. I think Chicago Bears alternate win total on DraftKings Sportsbook under 5.5 wins plus 160. That is the sort of odd on a conviction that I have, that you have, that I know a lot of people have. I'd be willing to tie up my money for plus 160.
Absolutely. I mean, I think like we laughed all season long at the Jags number last year that we couldn't believe. And I literally spent probably 45 minutes last night looking at the Bears roster, Bears offseason, Bears schedule. And I'm like, I don't know what I'm missing here. Like the books don't get it right 100% of the time. There are numbers to be had. You know what? The Bears go out and win 7 games. You tip your cap. You lost the bet. I'm sure there's others you're going to win along the way. And say, listen, I gave it my all. This is my best bet of the season. Hey, it worked with the Jags and the Cardinals last year. My other one was the Packers to win the NFC North. Somehow was almost 155 last year somehow for the Packers to win that division, which made no sense to me because the rest of the division was trash. But I'd make the same bet this year, but not as much confidence because it is 190 and the Vikings are better and the Lions are better. The Bears will not win 7 games this year. I'm pretty confident in it.
Last thing I want to talk to you about is your involvement now, because you went from stats and research, the info desk at ESPN to, and we were just chatting a little bit before the show about this, is why I wanted to bring it up, that I worked at a few networks in Canada and tried to get gambling instituted as a part of their coverage. Not because, I mean, obviously the sponsorship deals before legalization just weren't there, but it's not like you couldn't reference odds. That wasn't illegal. I mean, people covertly did it for years, but the narrative and talking points that you can build off what the odds are for a game to try to explain that to people, I just felt like always told better stories than whatever generic narrative that the analysts who aren't looking at numbers whatsoever can come up with. I felt like that told a better story, and that better story would in turn create better TV when people are arguing about it. But no one wanted to hear about that. But it seemed like you had a bit more success at ESPN.
Yeah, and you know, listen, I was in the stats info department, and we were charged with coming up with storylines that are stat driven and giving it to all of our platforms. And if you go back to about 2014, 2015, and working with Chad Millman, who's now CEO of the Action Network, he was at ESPN editor in chief at the time, and we talked about pushing betting to the sports betting to the next platform. And we went ahead and purchased the Gold Sheet database from Bruce Marshall in Las Vegas and started creating storylines around sports betting. And it's like, listen, we were in charge of producing content that told stories. So I would always tell people, very similar to what you just said, is you can tell me that Tom Brady is 7-1 against the Dolphins last 4 years, but I could also tell you that he's 3-5 against the spread. Like, that's another storyline to look at, and look at it from a prism of they're going to win but not cover, and what that means in the grand scheme of things. And futures get talked about a lot on our network. Player props is basically fantasy, daily fantasy, etc. So little by little, we were pushing the envelope. You've seen what College Game Day has done with their picks and betting lines, but still, there was still that whole, it is illegal in every single state but Nevada. So we're not going to have a show. We're not going to do anything else. We'll mix it in when the story is correct. PASPA gets overturned in May of 2018, and it's, hey, now that it's going to be legal in New Jersey in about 5 minutes, in Pennsylvania and everywhere it's going to grow and all the states are going to do it, let's look into what we are going to be doing. And it's, hey, can you put a pilot together for a show at ESPN, one that we have tried to sell over the last 15 years? And it's, yeah, here's a pilot. Here's what a show would look like. Let's tape it. Let's send it up the chain. Bam, we got Daily Wager launched in May of 2019. Took over ESPN Chalk and moving things around and expanding our breadth. And now you look at all the shows, Sports Center, Game Day, a couple of other shows where we are allowed to do it. We do it. Have an odds provider deal with Caesars and link out deals with Caesars and DraftKings. So we're monetizing it as well as putting shows on the air. ESPN Chalk has content every single day that I oversee with betting content, picks, columns, news in the industry from David Purdom, who's a leader in reporting on the industry, as well as second screen events that, Pat, if you had told me 10 years ago you were going to be helping produce a second screen event during a Monday night football game or a wild card NFL game, I would have thought you were crazy. But we had an NFL Live / Daily Wager betcast that was on a ESPN Plus second screen event of the NFL wild card game, as well as Monday Night Football, a couple of NBA Wednesday night games where we're doing betting driven content in sports that never recognized betting for many, many, many years. Different world, different, completely different. We're legal in 30 states now, including the state that ESPN is in Connecticut, and just doing as much as we can on a daily basis. Well,
the move for you now, you need to really dig in some roots to whoever is producing the ESPN Plus PGA Tour live coverage. They have those feeds. Just get them to dedicate one of them to the All Betting on PGA Tour show, and then all of a sudden we can take over that feed. That's how we're going to get in here.
I agree, and it's been talked about. I can't get too much into it.
You bring up my name. You just tell them, yeah, Pat's ready. He's been waiting for that. This is what he has been waiting for.
We have had conversations about, now that ESPN Plus does have PGA Tour Live, we have had those conversations. There's a lot of things that you got to go through to get to that level, but it would be awesome one day to have a channel dedicated to that, especially in a sport that you and I both love, that is pretty much on the rise when it comes to sports betting. Easy to bet in terms of slow enough. You got, guy tees off, you got 5 minutes for his approach shot, 5 more minutes before he putts. Lots of live betting. There's no sport that's better for live betting than golf to begin with. And there's just tons of fun to be had there. And it's, hey, listen, we have plans that are pie in the sky, and we have plans that are more realistic. And again, if you had told me we'd be doing a second screen betcast on an NFL game on Monday Night Football, I would have thought you were nuts. We're doing it. Who knows what's next, but we're experimenting with a whole bunch of different things.
Well, if you guys ever need outside consultation for someone who has 14 years of second screen producing experience on sports betting, just tell them, give me my call. I might even consult for free. How about that? I just want it to happen. Even if I'm not a part of it, I just want to see it happen. And the more help I can do to that, people out there too, you call in, you tweet at ESPN, you tell them that you want to see this. You can also follow David on Twitter at DBearman, ESPN, which I highly recommend that you do. Do you have any cool pieces coming out between now and the start of NFL season?
Yeah, starting on August 9th through pretty much the rest of August, we're going to have a piece every single day dedicated to previewing either college or NFL, both obviously the two sports that are the biggest in terms of betting. We'll have at least one piece every day throughout the rest of August, whether it's previewing win totals for one league, making a case for one team to win the national title or a division. Maybe I'll have someone do the Raiders or something like that just for fun. Heisman, MVP. We're going to have tons of preview content from pretty much late next week all the way through when the season starts. Then you turn it around, all of a sudden it's week 1 of college football. It's Labor Day, the NFL starting, and we're good to go. So tons of content coming. Our golf column, which I know you read weekly, is up right now with myself, Anita Marks, and the caddy, Michael Collins. It's up right now on ESPN Chalk, as well as our golf page, and we'll have our MMA content out tomorrow. And then we're going to go full board football coming up.
I think you guys follow very much of the same recipe of the Mayo Media Network. A lot of UFC, a lot of golf until football starts. It's a lot of football and UFC at the same time. So thanks for being on, dude. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. Big fan. And follow me on Twitter, DBearman ESPN. And it's a pleasure being on, Pat. Good luck with the bets and Bears under.
No, I just put $500 on the Bears alternate under. So You know, if they go over, you know, Pat's out $500. That's what we can at least take to the bank from the course of this show. Also, follow me at the PME on Twitter. Sub to Mayo Media Network. Sub to the free newsletter down in the description. Also down there, you can find the entire NFL preview package completely free. All the links are there. Highly recommend that you do it because it's beneficial to me if you click on those links. Duh. Obviously, that's the case. Anyway, I'm Pat Mayo. We'll be back with more football next week. Until then, I'll see you next time.
Pat Mayo Experience! Experience!